Hey, welcome back to part 8 of the revolutions of 1989. This time we're talking about the contextualization of the church's role, especially in East Germany, but West Germany too, and throughout Europe during the 1980s. This is Kevin Soda. I welcome you to our YouTube channel, and we ask you to make comments. If you didn't comment now, you can comment later.
Or during the video.
Or during the video, my daughter says. Let me continue where we left off. Uh, there was a peace researcher, John Bacher, and he noted several decades ago the first independence peace activity in the GDR, that's Eastern Germany, was a response to the introduction of conscription in 1962. Some 3,000 persons refused to serve on the grounds of conscientious objection in Eastern Germany. Less than a dozen were actually imprisoned. The National Lutheran Church took up their cause, and its pressure resulted in the creation in 1964 of special army construction units, Bausoldaten, for conscientious objectors. This remains the most liberal provision for conscientious objection in any of the Warsaw Pact states at the time. Popular pressure against militarization since 1975 have increased the civilian quality of their construction corps. Former members of the Bausoldaten have become prominent in the independent peace movement. They have kept in touch with each other and have organized peace seminars. That means between East and West. Their distinctive clothes have been called a uniform for a division of peace movement, an Eastern German specialty. Um, uh, Another writer, Lazarus, observed in the late 1980s, work for peace began to be decentralized and extended to areas outside of East Germany's major urban centers. For example, by the mid 1980s, the Protestant student community in Rostock had organized a monthly peace worship service. Every 6 months, a retreat and a meditation day on the theme of peace took place in the Land Church of Mecklenburg. That means the state church. Standing workshops for peace were formed in numerous student communities, and peace seminars, often attended by hundreds of people, were held in Karl-Marx-Stadt, Meissen, Waldheim, Zittau, Kessing, and elsewhere. Let's talk about Bibles, church, and tolerance in Eastern Europe of the 1980s. The churches over several decades had come to be safe havens, particularly for those of the East German peace movement behind the Iron Curtain. Historian Stephen Lazarus writes that definitely the mass engagement of East German citizens with strong connections to the church helped assure the success and peaceful nature of revolution. One can safely say that East German Protestant Church was at the forefront of the revolution, initiating and propelling many of the historical and political changes that collectively are known as the Friedliche Revolution, or Peaceful Revolution of 1989. Historian Mark Jansen, who studied at Humboldt and also at my alma mater, Bethel College, and worked with the Mennonite churches of East Germany in the 1980s, tells of his journey with East German theological students and their faculty as they traveled from East Berlin to Russia at the end of the decade. These East German students and faculty quite openly took Russian language Bibles and Bibles of other languages eastwards with them into the evil empire of the Soviet Union. From this example, it seems that the Russian Bear had given up hopes of converting its own masses to atheism or agnosticism by the late 1980s, or as Gorbachev rolled around. Similarly, other European borders had been open to evangelism over recent decades. Poland was an obvious case throughout the 1980s, especially due to the recent appointment of a Polish-born Pope, John Paul II, to head the Vatican. Meanwhile, other Eastern European borders seem to be open to building links between churches between East and West. I recall that at least one young intermental trainee drove Bibles to Hungary and Romania in 1984 without much difficulty. Yes, the Bibles were smuggled in, but this was done annually without incident for years by many young Western Europeans without much incident. Even in East Germany, which had tried at times to outdo the Soviet Union in its attempt to have a successful communist dictated economy, East Germany began to show a warmer spot for the role of churches. Once Honecker replaced Ulbricht in the late 1960s as communist chair in the German Democratic Republic. This was first evident in the East German government's acceptance of conscientious objectors, especially if one's family included an active minister. This was recognized. According to Lazarus, at least 5 ways or members of Protestant churches across Europe could be noticed. Most notably in Leipzig and Berlin, but also in smaller rural locales, people became engaged in political activity at the grassroots level. Although the church has had a significant political identity for years, it had never before the 1980s fostered as much anti-government protest as its members did in the final years of the collapse of the communist rule. The development of special interest activist groups within local congregations is the second indication of the significant political involvement of the churches and the people involved themselves who were involved in the churches. The base groups were collections of individuals with a variety of social concerns who met to plan events and exchange ideas regarding peace and disarmament issues, human rights, preservation of the environment, and several other concerns. They served as a broad umbrella under the church's wing to bring Christian and other activists together into the grassroots organizations that later served as the core of dissent during the revolution of 1989. The church sheltered and defended these groups who were prohibited from meeting openly. They enjoyed relatively safety inside the church walls, although the danger always remained that the government informants could infiltrate the church, and they did. John Burgess described the unique free space that these groups provided for activists from whatever organization. This contrasts to the state-imposed conformity that they experienced elsewhere. The church offered a sense of freedom and acceptance, he explained, that they did not find elsewhere in society. The agenda of these groups influenced the synods, that'd be the different Lutheran churches, approach to social issues and helped keep the church attentive to the political interests of East Germans at the local level. Lazarus adds, in short, in East Germany, the church served as the key meeting place for dissenters during the revolution and before, and fostered the development of core activist groups. Members of these close-knit pockets of political dissent became instrumental as leaders during the weeks of mass protest that we observed throughout 1989. In addition, Lazarus and other researchers have also noted the central role of the church leaders and members is or was evident in their political engagement before and during the revolution. In 1, conducting dialogues between citizens and government; 2, in organizing mass protest; and in 3, providing a safe meeting place for diverse activist groups which united some of the most vocal dissenting elements of society that challenged the government's authority. I'll take again a break, or anytime you ask some questions, I'd be glad to answer them about the revolution in Eastern Germany in 1989. Again, this is Kevin Stoda's YouTube channel. I hope you enjoy what you're watching, and like us if you do. We appreciate it.